Albertans want a fair deal from Ottawa and the rest of the nation as the province continues to pour huge dollar amounts into equalization payments. There's a separatist movement brewing here as a result. Today's guest is very outspoken on this issue, as well as the move to end COVID lockdown measures. Drew Barnes is the MLA for Cypress Medicine Hat in Southeast Alberta, and he is joining me now from his car via Zoom. Welcome to Bridge City News, Drew.
Jeanette, thanks for talking to me today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So before we get started about getting a fair deal for Alberta, we just had the provincial budget come down. Can you briefly share your thoughts on the pros and cons? Is going into deeper debt justified?
No, well, first of all, the deeper debt is part of our problem with Ottawa. The fact that $25 billion a year leaves Alberta, the fact that this year's deficit is $20.2 billion, next year's is estimated to be $18.2, the savings are right there. Previous governments, previous lack of attention by taxpayers has led to where Alberta is now $100 billion in debt. Interest next year will be $2.7 billion, Jeanette. My goodness, that's more than whole departments. That money could be better spent on Albertans that need health, education, or social services. One of the good news, though, in the provincial finance minister's budget is he is going to bring per capita spending down to the same level of other big provinces. And it's time for Alberta to start to not only get a better deal with Ottawa, but get our spending in order.
Right. Okay. Now, Drew, you're on Alberta's Fair Deal panel because you're saying Albertans want a fair deal, obviously. So you believe that Alberta should adopt a provincial constitution. How do you see this helping our situation?
Well, first of all, a written Alberta Constitution would go a long way. It would help pull all the cultural components of Alberta together so we can work together, Jeanette. And secondly, it would tell our Canadian partners that we believe in resource movement, we believe in risk taking, we believe in charity, we believe in helping communities. And then secondly, it could define the size of government. We have seen time and time again how Ottawa especially reaches into our lives. They can't control our resources because we own them, so they make laws that impact the environment, the tanker ban, the no more pipelines laws. It would be a way to start to put those things in writing to protect Alberta and our future. And it would be the start of the Alberta autonomy that we need to build so we can get that Ottawa's $25 billion out of our economy off our back, and we can start to direct a strong and free Alberta.
This fall, we'll see Albertans voting in a provincial referendum on the equalization. Certainly here in southern Alberta, a lot of us believe that we're getting hosed, but what do you think this referendum will actually accomplish?
Well, I think, first of all, a strong signal from Albertans that we've had enough of paying for, all the costs across Canada, way more than our proportionate share, then Ottawa denying us resource movement, Ottawa denying us a chance to have Senate reform, and even the same amount of support as they give to other parts of Canada. That will be the start of that signal, and that will go a long way to do some goods. But Jeanette, it may die there. So it's one of the reasons about 10 days ago, I came out and I said the same day as our provincial election, which would be about a year after the equalization referendum, so October 2023, we need a referendum on independence. We need to put Ottawa on notice that Albertans have had enough, that it's time for a fair deal. We're willing to take the risk of opening the Constitution, of standing up to Ottawa if they don't give us resource movement, democratic reform, and fairness. And this way, Albertans can be the judge as to whether Ottawa is given enough, as to whether Ottawa has given us equality.
Well, that's true, but do you believe that Albertans would actually be better off as a nation than as a province?
Well, I just believe that Alberta should be the freest, most prosperous place. We got the best people. We're risk takers, agriculture, forestry. We have the third biggest oil reserve in the world. Landlocked, we're landlocked by our physical nature. So landlocked is not a difference. We'd be less bottlenecked if we were independent than we are if Ottawa, controls us the way they do now. Jeanette, I just believe that Alberta should be the freest, most prosperous place. If that's within Canada, that's great. If that's not within Canada, that's great too.
So where would you peg support for independence at? What are you hearing from your constituents about that?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I would say about 30% now. 30% of people that have had enough with Ottawa believe they will never change, are so tired of the Laurentian elite controlling us. But the Fair Deal panel showed it's up to 80%. 80% of Albertans want to take some level of risk, want to do some pushback to Ottawa to open the Constitution, to get resource movement, to stop equalization, to have our own police force, have our own pension, have our own control over immigration. So that 30% that I think would vote in favor of Alberta independence today could grow as high as 80%, depending on what happens the next little while with Ottawa's treating us fairly or not.
So let's say Alberta votes down a separation. So do you think a referendum would strengthen our hand in negotiating a better deal with Ottawa?
Yeah, I first of all, I'm wondering why, like 10 provinces, how it ever evolved to where one of the 10 is treated so unfairly compared to the rest. I mean, Saskatchewan is in a similar boat, I suppose. But why wouldn't our Canadian partners want a fairer deal anyway? It would be good for everyone. So I think the more we raise that awareness, there's many hardworking people in Ontario, Quebec, and the Maritimes that aren't as clear on the situation, aren't as clear on the policy details as we are. I think anytime you shed light on something, anytime Albertans let all Canadians know where we stand, that's only going to be good. I'm not afraid of losing a referendum.
Okay, so Drew, you and a UCP colleague, MLA Angela Pitt, have joined the End the Lockdowns National Caucus as part of your efforts to see more personal freedoms and also to enable small businesses to stay alive. So, can you tell us a bit more about this caucus?
I sure can. Last count, it was about 45 MPs, former MPs, MLAs, and councilmen, and former politicians across Canada that believe the lockdowns have done as much mental health and economic damage as handling the COVID crisis. Um, my goodness, southeastern Alberta, our mental health crisis is huge. It's at least as bad as the COVID crisis. I'm hearing the same from around Alberta. That's very sad. So this is a way to highlight. We've never been in a pandemic where we shut everything down before. So this is a way to highlight and review the government's responses to this COVID-19, to the pandemic. Are they going to lock us down every year? Is it time to open up? I mean, large parts of southern Alberta have zero cases or very few. I've been arguing for regional cases. So, Jeanette, one of the main things we're trying to do is make all premiers and prime ministers and government officials, decision makers, aware that the lockdown is having dramatic effects, aware it's different in all parts of the province, and hopefully, like shining light, some transparency on this will make it better for Albertans.
Now, the lockdown measures have, of course, caused all kinds of division. So, what's been the feedback that you've been hearing from your constituents? And has there been a difference between rural and urban citizens?
Oh, I absolutely believe there is a difference between rural and urban. Again, we for large parts of the 12 months that we've been under regulation and lockdown, our areas had zero cases or very small. People know that the first standard, like a lot of small businesses that were totally safe that weren't allowed to open. Gyms are the best example. We need that physical and mental health that goes with that, and they're still not fully open, where there could be long-term consequences of that. And Jeanette, the response from my constituents has been wonderful. I had about 40 of them come to my office last week, and not a protest, but they were in front of my office in support of me calling for more regional restrictions for COVID. And we definitely want to help each other, but we also know that there's mental health and there's economic effects as well.
So, sort of an anti-protest, if you will. Now, with Medicine Hat, particularly, I know has just had so much mental health issues there. Now, do you think that a year or two from now we may actually see all kinds of lawsuits against various levels of government because of deaths and medical distress inadvertently caused by lockdown measures?
I believe we will. I believe there's a reckoning coming for this. It's so sad. community of 63,000, and we have to be over 20 suicides, never mind the addictions and the overdoses and the strife that you just can't measure. And it's one of the reasons I joined the anti-lockdown caucus. Let's measure what the government's doing. Let's look at all the effects. Let's talk about it. If there's going to be a COVID-20, or if we're going to have to go into lockdown again, let's continually strive to do the best we can for all Albertans. And again, this is a brand new situation, so let's get it the best we can going forward.
Yeah, how wide would you like to see our province opened up? Like what kinds of restrictions would you be okay with?
Well, I'd like to see our province open up more now. Gyms should be open. I think we can have a bigger floor square footage capacity for occupancy for churches and for small businesses. Um, I think that, and especially, I guess regional is the main thing. Large parts of rural Alberta have no cases or one small little cluster of cases. We're in our 12th month of COVID. There's a lot of fatigue out there, Jeanette, and I think if this is going to last longer, and people also need some of the essentials. The chance to be spiritual, to go to church, that's essential. To go to a gym, physical and workout, that's essential. There's just so many things that we cannot overlook. Normal day-to-day human activity, physical and social and spiritual are three of them.
Yeah. Now, Drew, are you concerned at all about getting booted from the UCP caucus? Are you getting pressure from some fellow MLAs to stop speaking out about lockdowns?
No, I'm very grateful for Premier Kenny in that at this point. Um, there's been very, very little pushback as to what I've been saying. Actually, I've been encouraged to speak out, and try to work it as part of the team as well. I mean, the government from sometimes has messages that they want to take front and center. And, I think it's important for Albertans to realize I'm not in cabinet, I'm not a decision maker. So although I'm at caucus meetings and I can talk, I'm not part of those decisions. So at this point, I'm just going to continue to speak up, and I'm going to continue to relay what Albertans are telling me.
Now, the opposition has something else to say about that. You were mentioning before that,
Yeah,
was
yeah.
it Rachel Notley had something to say
Rachel
there?
Notley for 3 times has asked me to be kicked out of caucus by Premier Kenny, because I've questioned and I've asked for more transparency on the COVID lockdowns. Funnily enough, she put it on her Facebook page 3 or 4 days ago, asking her people to ask Premier Kenny to kick me out. And as of this morning, I was leading that poll about 70-30, where 70% of the people were saying, no, you shouldn't kick him out. His voters put him there. He's speaking some things we want to talk about. He's presenting some different ideas and some truths. And that, Jeanette, that's one of the things we need in Alberta. We need some democratic reform where people like me, government backbenchers, have the opportunity to speak up consistently for the 50,000 people we represent, rather than just relay the government message. So I'm pleased to be able to do that.
Yeah. Now, before we let you go, Drew, any thoughts on the efforts we see to shut down free speech when it comes to dissenting opinions on how to deal with COVID? Where is this going to end up?
Well, thank you for that question. Isn't that incredibly, like so many people have tried to quiet, especially the conservative voices. We have forgotten that free speech, challenging each other, makes everything better. It allows us to exhaust our ideas and fully promote them. I always think of the Israeli army. I hear when they develop a plan, even if everybody in the room likes it, they appoint 1 or 2 people as the people to be the devil's advocate, to speak against the plan, to sharpen it up. Respectfully, we can do that. Respectfully, we should all speak up to make Alberta better and stronger for our communities, our families, and our kids. And I'm concerned about the culture now that armchair warriors that continually jump in and try to silence, especially people with conservative voices. But respectfully and loudly, let's all continue to speak up, and let's present the things that conservatives are trying to conserve: truth, beauty, the right to take risk and be self-reliant, and charity. And I'm a believer in respectfully, let's all speak up more than we have.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Drew, thank you so much for your time today. We really, really appreciate you coming on the show. Drew Barnes is the MLA for the Cypress Medicine Hat riding in Southeast Alberta.
Thank you very much, Jeanette.